I'm going to record this now. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Andrew Gibson. I think I know quite a lot of you on the screen. Thank you very much for coming to this workshop, and thank you, Beverly, for inviting me to deliver this in United States and America's time zone. It's a real honor and a privilege. So what we're going to do tonight, or this afternoon or this morning, is we are going to explore stories. And I'm going to get you straight into this. Before I explain any of the theory, I'm getting you straight into some breakout rooms. So let's see, how many breakout rooms do we need? We will need, I think if we have 5 breakout rooms, and I'm just going to assign people manually. So if you just give me a moment, if you're all happy to be assigned. So Beverly, you are quiet. That's fine. I'm going to Hector, iPhone, joke. Then we've got Kristen, Kim, Linda. If you find out I have put you in a room and you'd rather be quiet, just come back to the main reception, okay? So I've got Simon, Lena, and Beverly just staying here with me, okay? So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes. Okay, so I'm setting the timer for 1 minute with a countdown timer of 60 seconds. So when I open these breakout rooms, what I'd like you to do is just to tell each other a story. I see now there's 3 of you in a room, so I better make it 2 minutes. Sorry. Just tell each other a story of how you've helped somebody recently. Okay? Tell each other a story of how you've helped somebody recently. And I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Okay, so I'll just put the question in the chat. So,
well, I think Steve didn't plan not to be here, so he just decided he had to sleep, and so I'm that person. Except I don't really get it, but
well done for stepping in, yeah, and yeah, thank you for all your hard work and putting this all together. It's great.
Well, it's like I am the least person who should be doing all these small details of organization. Because all of a sudden I was that person at the opening, which I didn't expect to be, so I had nothing planned. But anyways, I'm just now trying to help people who are at the last minute can't find their Zoom link and stuff.
Yeah, of which of course there are always many. Well, so this idea here, I'll explain it in a little minute, but for the benefit of Lena and Simon and Beverly, the thing I'm trying to demonstrate tonight is the rich resources that are contained within a story that are just so much more engaging and so much more interesting than talking about what we do all the time. And you'll see as the workshop develops how that works. So hopefully you'll find this useful, even though you're not actually participating in the breakout rooms. Yeah. Oh.
No, I'm really interested in the topic. I just don't want to feel like I need to check back and forth if you don't mind letting me in and out sometimes. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course, no problem at all. Okay, so I'm just going to close the rooms now. And this is the other thing about this, is that when you get the hang of this, you can do this in a really, really short space of time, okay? You find when people talk about what they do, they want to lay out all the detail of everything we do, yeah? And as solution-focused practitioners, we're really passionate about it, so we want to talk about absolutely everything we do. And actually, it can take a long time, and it can be really boring. So.
So this is to make us less boring?
This is to make it less boring, yeah. Absolutely right, Beverly.
Good.
That's what we should have called the workshop. Make solution-focused practitioners less boring. Okay, just a few more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and welcome back, everybody. Now, just really quickly, did anybody hear an interesting story from one of their colleagues there? Just stick your hands up if you did. Yeah, excellent. And did you learn something about the person who's telling you the story? Just in that really short story, did you learn something about them and their credibility and their skills and how they made a difference? Okay.
I talked to Louis, who told the story, and I just know that she enjoys doing what she does.
Yeah, brilliant.
In terms of it, and the enthusiasm of being with someone like that just rubs off.
It absolutely does. This is one of the things about stories. When you tell a story, your passion comes across in the story. And stories have a huge amount of resource-rich value when shared really, really well, and particularly when shared in your network. Is everybody familiar, or is anybody familiar with the concept of social capital? You guys heard of social capital? Beverly, yeah? Bella, yeah. So, social capital, the idea of social capital is your narrative in your network. I'm just going to mute.
Oh, is that the watermelon?
Yeah. There you go, Leanne. Just muted you. Sorry. Just the idea of social capital is it's your narrative in your network, which is how your story changes over time and how it is shared in your network. And this is something which health economists in particular, if you want to look at a practical example of this, health economists have been looking at social capital as a way of improving people's health outcomes. If you think about it, we all probably know somebody who's retired. They're on lots of committees, yeah? They're maybe involved in the local charities, they're chairman of this, they're on the board of that, they're president of the other, they're really involved, they're really active. And when you meet them, you find out how old they are, they're 10 years older than they appear. And sadly, the opposite is also true. We also know people who find themselves living in isolation. They don't have very many friends or family. They don't get out of the house much. They often have greater health needs and they often live shorter, poorer health lives. And the difference seems to be the activity and the network and their social capital. So if you think about it perhaps as high social capital is like having high resilience, low social capital is like having low resilience. And your narrative in your network is your social capital. So we're going to explore stories a little bit. What makes a good story? Okay, so who recognizes this guy in the middle? Yeah? Anybody? Yeah, and recognize him? For younger people in the audience, you might not recognize this actor as the same character. Yeah? And
Luke.
And if it's the guy second on the left, then you're either far too young to be on this call, and if you're in Europe, you should be in bed now, or alternatively, you've got children or grandchildren who play with a lot of Lego and who also, of course, love Star Wars. I am, of course, talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, Obi-Wan Kenobi is the storyteller in the original Star Wars film, which, again, is now known as Star Wars 4. But when I was a kid, I remember going to see it in the cinema when it came out, and it was amazing. It just blew everybody's mind. And of course, it's the story of Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is the hero. I'm going to do a little spoiler here, by the way. Has anybody not seen the film? It's about 40.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, apologies now if I just spoil the film slightly for you. It's the story of Luke Skywalker going on a journey, overcoming lots of challenges, and at the end of the film, plug your ears if you don't want to hear this bit, destroying the Death Star, okay? Obi-Wan Kenobi tells the story as the narrator, but the story is of Luke. It's Luke's story, and that's what engages us. That's what keeps us interested. That what's going to happen to Luke? What's going to happen to Luke? Will he overcome these challenges? Will he destroy the Death Star? And we all know that Obi-Wan Kenobi was involved as his mentor, as his friend, as his guide, the guy who found him, the guy who trained him, the guy who helped become the superhero that he was. But we don't hear any of that from Obi-Wan Kenobi himself. What we do is we work that out from the way the story is told. And this is where this gets really important, because what we're talking about when we tell a story is we're talking about engagement. If you're telling stories about your client, so your client is the hero, and you talk about the journey that your client went on, that will be engaging. People will be interested, just like we're interested in the story of Luke Skywalker. If you're talking about me and what I did, if this was the story of Obi-Wan Kenobi and he's coming in saying, hey, well, I found this little kid in the desert. He was an orphan. His house got destroyed in an attack. And so, you know, I trained to be a Jedi Knight. Oh, yeah, I knew from day one he was going to be great. It's not really very interesting. It's all me, and how great am I? So engaging stories tell us about the client. Don't talk about what you did, talk about the client. Now, who here likes a scary movie? Anybody? Okay. What is the scariest part of a movie? I'll give you a bit of a clue. Picture the scene. There's a camera zoomed in on a door handle. The hand comes in to open up the door and slowly opens up the door and pushes it open into the darkened space beyond. The music is building to a crescendo. You are now hooked on what's behind the door. Now, if you're like me at that point, you're thinking, why don't you put the light on? Anyway, you open the door, it's dark, and of course, something happens behind the door. And that's what that's what the film industry calls the jump scare. And everybody leaps back and recoils in horror at the thing that's behind the door. Afterwards, though, when you're having a coffee with your friend, you kind of think, was that it? Wasn't really that scary. I mean, you know, this film here was supposed to be the scariest film of all time, and yet it's really just about a bunch of teenagers finding some sticks. How scary is that really? And yet you're on the edge of your seat through the whole film, wondering what's out there. Your imagination is allowed to do that by removing detail from the story and allowing people to put in their own context. If you don't leave space for the audience to create their own context, you have very poor engagement. Whereas if you leave space for the audience to work it out for themselves and think about all the possible ways that you could have helped somebody, then of course they are engaged and they want to know more. Now, third part of storytelling. Anybody seen a magician recently? Either live, on TV, on YouTube? Okay. When the magician does the trick, the audience goes, wow, how did they do that? Now imagine if at that point the magician stopped their show, killed the music, and turned to the audience and said, I'm really glad you asked me that. Here's how we did it. I set this up before you all came here with all the mirrors and all the lights, got this big box, I got my glamorous assistant to climb in the box, wiggled the saw a bit so you think it's a real saw, but actually, you see where I'm going here? How bored are you now? And all you want to do is to say, stop, please, stop telling us how you did it. Just do another trick, will you? Make us go wow again. That's what we pay you for, make us go wow again. We don't want to spoil the magic. And so often when we talk about what we do, we spoil the magic. Just make people go wow, and they'll want to know more. So there are 3 elements of a great story. When you're thinking about who you've helped, make it about them. Make it their story. Make them the hero. Don't fill in the details. Don't talk about what you did. Leave it up to the audience to imagine what you did. And if you can, think of the stories that make your audience go, wow. Okay, so I'm going to pop you in a breakout room again, and I'm going to give you another couple of minutes. I think it's probably going to be about 1 minute each because there's 2 or 3 to a room. So we'll set these up for 3 minutes again. I'll put you in the same rooms so you can tell the same story if you like.
Oh, I'm going.
Okay, bye everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Tell the same story, tell a different story, but see if you can stick to those principles. Make it about the client and their journey. Don't go into too much detail about what you did. And if you can, think of a story that makes somebody go, wow. I'm just going to open the rooms again. And hopefully, if you're a quiet person, you'll stay here with me. And Andrea and Rochelle, I'll just put you guys in a room together. Welcome, glad you could make it and hope this is making sense so far. I'll just put you guys into room 5 together. Okay. Okay.
I just joined. I'm on 2 devices now. On my iPad, I'm in the main room, so I can do both now. I think that's what that means, right?
Fantastic, yeah.
I think. Okay.
2 places at once.
Yeah, it's good for someone who's as distractible as me.
And what's happening in the main room at the moment?
I think nothing. I'm just trying to see who's here. Oh, Andrew, I'm so bad at this. Jeez. Okay. Anyways, I just want to say this is really great because I do cartooning and telling stories, but I haven't been able to apply it to my work as a therapist. So
Cool.
I'm looking for we learn the same things when you're don't say show, right? We show more than say, right?
Well, I'll maybe refer to this again later. This is a book written by a friend of mine who taught me a lot of this stuff.
Rule the world.
I'll keep this and show it to people later because yeah, it's a really, really, really good book about mastery of storytelling and the power it has in your network. And I learned loads and loads of stuff from Paul. Yeah, it's well worth a read.
Okay, I mean, for me, I don't do much networking because I just have my own private practice, but I want to be able to tell more stories about my work.
With your, and it's that thing about telling stories about the people you've helped leads to referrals to more people that you've helped, or who are like the people that you've helped. Okay. Talking about what you do, you're kind of expecting people, I might say this again when everybody's back, you're kind of expecting people to work out that what you do is what somebody else needs. Yeah. And in the longer format version of this talk that I do, I talk about the Holy Grail effect, where it's like, well, I don't need one of them. I've already got one of them. You know, why would I want to talk to Beverly when I've already got one of them? You know, it's like, well, actually, Beverly's helped somebody just like you. Yeah, but I've already got one. So if you're talking about what you do, people don't think they need you. Whereas if it's like, oh, no, actually, I know somebody who's helped somebody just like you. Oh, what did they do? I really don't know. They're the expert. Let me introduce you. But here's a great story.
It's interesting. It's interesting, too, because when I did my website, the website person said, don't tell people who you are. Tell them let them see you on their first page. Let them see themselves on your first page. That you know people like them and you tell stories about people like them. So that's interesting. That's what he had told me.
So welcome back, everybody. Now, did the story all of a sudden get more interesting and more useful? Who heard a more interesting, more useful story? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Well done. Now, this does take a little bit of practice, but once you get your head into this space, it actually becomes quite easy. And what we're really all about is turning networking into useful conversations. Okay. Now, the whole idea of this is that people don't actually want what you do. Okay. Very few people woke up this morning and said, you know what I really need is a solution-focused therapist. I quite fancy a bit of solution-focused therapy today. Do we know any solution-focused therapists, folks? Same as me. I really need a solution-focused coach. That's what I need. I really don't need a solution-focused anything if I've never heard of solution-focused practice or solution-focused therapy. And even if I have, how many of us have had this situation where we've been talking about solution-focused and somebody said to us, but I'm already solution-focused? Especially if you work in organizations, yeah? Everybody's a solution-focused expert in organizations. They've never heard of solution-focused practice, but they are questing for solutions all the time. So they don't need our help, because why would they want to learn something where they think they already are it? And yet, how many of you told a great story there of helping somebody with something that somebody else would also need? Yeah. There is loads and loads of resources in those stories. Where did anybody here hear a story where they're thinking, oh, actually, I know somebody else who I should introduce you to, because the story you just told me has resonated and I can think of somebody else who really needs to talk to you. Anybody have that experience just in that 2-minute story? Yeah, Kristen and Joke, you guys are nodding. Yeah, no. This is how we develop this into a skill where we're sharing stories in our network that actually lead to more introductions to more people that need our help. And this also makes networking much more interesting than going networking and finding people who are just saying, hello, I'm a solution-focused coach. Let me tell you about solution-focused practice and how it's different from all the other coaching methodologies that you use. Again, have you ever gone to a networking event and heard lots and lots of coaches there all talking about how brilliant their methodology is? And yet ours is kind of weird because we don't want to have a whole load of sessions. We want to have as few sessions as possible. And people are looking at you saying, are you mad? How do you make money doing? So it really doesn't make any sense what we do. And yet we spend so much time trying to explain it. Why don't we just tell stories instead? So we're going to go into the breakout rooms again, and I'm going to give you a little bit longer this time. This time, we're going to use this structure here. Okay. What I'd like to do is to think of a story of how you've helped somebody. Oh, we'll just let Mark in as well and let Mark catch up. Okay, welcome. So we're just about to go into breakout rooms again, and I'll just explain a little bit about what we're doing for the people who have. Shall I move you around a bit? Would you like to meet somebody else? This is, after all, some networking, isn't it? So I'm going to recreate all the rooms, and we probably need just an extra room here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to follow this structure here. So tell a story of how you help somebody, and ask, once you've heard the story, once you've heard enough of the story, then ask the person, okay, what difference did this make for the other person afterwards? Okay, what difference did this make for the other person afterwards? If you can answer that question, then you're starting to establish the difference that you made, and other people want that difference. If you think about it, we're all in the business of helping people to notice something different. So therefore, why don't we talk about the differences that we've made for our clients? And then the final question is, would you like introductions to more people like that? Believe it or not, sometimes I do this and people say, oh no, I wouldn't really want an introduction to somebody like that. Okay, fine, no problem. Just tell me another story about somebody that you'd like to have, somebody you'd like to help. Okay. Now, let me just build these rooms. I'm conscious, Olayinka, are you driving or are you a passenger at the moment? You look like you're driving, so I won't put you in a breakout room. Let's have.
Please put me in breakout room and parking, please.
Okay, Olayinka, I will do. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so excuse me just one moment while I build these rooms. I'm just doing them manually. I hope you don't mind, because obviously I don't want to put people who wanted to be quiet in the breakout room. Okay, so I'm going to open all the rooms. Please try and remember that, or make a quick note if you haven't done already. Tell me a story of how you helped somebody recently. What difference did this make for them afterwards? And would you like introductions to more people like that? And this time I'm going to give you, and yes, Hector, you're absolutely right. 2 minutes is far too little time. So I'm going to give you a total of 7 minutes this time. So it'll be 8 minutes total, slightly less than the 5 minutes on the screen, but I'm conscious of time. And this time, and then I'll explain to Nikki and others, to 2 more people who've come here. Welcome, Nikki, and welcome, Elizabeth. You join us just as I've put people into breakout rooms, so just let Elizabeth connect to audio. Okay, so rather than just dropping you, Elizabeth still isn't connected to the audio, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I'm late. I was confused. I went to the wrong place, I guess,
Oh.
and sat there for a while, and then
No problem, Nikki. No problem. It's great to see you now. Elizabeth seems to be struggling to connect to the audio. So what we've just worked through is 3 elements of good storytelling. Okay, so I've been asking people to tell each other a story of how they've helped somebody recently. And the 3 elements of good storytelling are, first of all, that the client is the hero of the story. And I used Obi-Wan Kenobi telling Luke Skywalker's story as an example of how it's the story of Luke. And we all know that Obi-Wan was involved, but Luke is Luke's journey that is described. Okay. And then not going into too much detail gives you the chance for the audience to work out for themselves how you help somebody. Okay. So they'll be curious to find out how you help somebody rather than you telling them before they've asked. And then they're going, oh, but I don't think I really need somebody who does that. And then the final thing is, if you can think of stories that make people go, wow, fantastic. Tell us those stories, because they're the ones that will be compelled to tell other people. Okay. Yeah. Now, Elizabeth is struggling to connect to the audio by the looks of it. And we've got Simon and Lena have requested quiet space because they've got family going to sleep or something going on. So they're asked not to be put in a breakout room. So Nikki, would you like to tell us a story of how you've helped somebody recently?
well, I suppose one that's popping up. I'm retired as a many-year therapist, but and I've been mediating for more years than I was a therapist. So I was really interested recently in a mediation that I did between a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And they were at 2 opposite parts of the United States,
Oh, wow.
different parts of the country. And so the thing that really interested me was in using the solution focused, because I've been developing a process of doing of solution focused mediation. And I've been spending since 2016 working on this, and it was so beautiful the other day, because in coming in and asking them for their best hopes, and the courts had sent them, and they were fighting over the parenting of their 7-year-old boy. Mm-hmm. And how this was going to happen, and they were not obviously getting along with that. And each of them had teenage children of their own that they were raising individually, mm-hmm. from different relationships. Mm-hmm. And as they came in and I asked for, what their best hopes were from our work together today, and with the wanting to be the best possible father and working together, etc. After, what I love is, we took 2 hours. Mm-hmm. They came to wonderful agreements, and when we got to the end, they were laughing. Mm-hmm. They were talking. We said goodbye, and I still didn't know what their problem was. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about doing solution focused with people, so that they take what they've, the hero in themselves, and they take the experience. My hope is always they take the experience forward into the future, so that they may never have to go back to court. Mm-hmm. So that was, the agreement. The agreement is the goal, but it's not the outcome. So, the outcome is really what they, when we focus on what their best hopes are right from the beginning, They don't have to dive into that rabbit hole of blaming.
So having helped this couple who were at opposite ends of the country, what difference did that make for them and their family afterwards?
Well, that's the wonderful part of it, is I will never know.
Okay.
You know, that, yeah, it's what happens after the fact certainly is theirs. And with mediation, I may see people, you know, again, or even up to 4 or 5 times, generally not. So it is necessarily brief, and so things have to be done in a brief way and in a powerful way that gives people the opportunity to really be together, work together,
And most importantly, bring up the kids well together.
and in these circumstances, when it's custody, visitation, and divorce, it's, you know, they're learning what it means, and that's the meaning underneath it for them. And you know, those are the things that really bring people together, is what it means for their children into the future as well as themselves.
So is it fair to say that you help separated or divorcing couples to bring up their children well?
Well, at least I can't say I help them do it, but I am, you know, I get to offer them the opportunity to find their best way of doing it.
That's the very precise language of a very modest practitioner. But for the purposes of this story, I think it's safe to say you help them. How much you help them, whether it works every single time, maybe we'll never know. But would you like introductions to more families in that situation to see if you could help them?
Would I like more introduction?
Yeah, to help more families
into the family? If I were to be based on what the issue was that brought them in, or if I was their therapist, yes.
Okay.
Definitely. And sometimes I have whole families that come in mediation, but oftentimes, and I have, you know, parents and children. I've had people come in the door arguing over what gravestone they were going to put on their mother's grave. So,
yeah. So welcome back, everybody. Nikki's joined us just before we went to break up there. So, and Elizabeth, I think you've managed to join us now as well. It looks like your audio is connected. So Nikki's a mediator, but she helps families where the parents are at opposite ends of the country and indeed divorcing, separating, so on, to work together to bring up their kids well together, which is a really lovely thing to do. So how was that breakout room? I gave you a little bit longer and a little bit more structure. Did you find that that was a useful conversation?
Yes.
Yeah. And even though in all different parts of the world and different time zones and so on, did anybody spot an opportunity where they think, actually, I know somebody who needs to talk to you because they might need help like that too? Possibly. Possibly not. When you get practiced at this is how this approach actually starts to work. Because if you spend lots of time talking about what you do, we're kind of waiting, in the longer format version of this workshop I talk about the difference between word of mouth, referrals and recommendations, and inquiries. If you talk about what you do, then you're expecting somebody to know that they need you. Now that's okay if you are a heating engineer and you've got a boiler on the blink. We all know we need a heating engineer to fix the boiler, okay? But do we know that we need a solution-focused practice session, whether it's coaching, therapy, or whatever? Do we know that, you know, do people out there know that that's what they need? Now, again, some people do, in which case they will come and find us, but we help people in so many different ways where how we help them is not as important as the difference we make afterwards, okay? And this is where I'd really like you to start thinking about how we can use this this properly, because one of the things to remember is people don't actually want what you do. When we put our car in to be repaired, do we spend a long time exploring with the mechanic all of the tools that they're going to use, all of the parts that they're going to put on the car, the order in which they're going to dismantle the car, reassemble the car, where they're going to get those parts, where they're going to, where those parts were made and so on? Do we go into all the history and all the details of where the parts came from? And of course we don't. We just want the car to be fixed. We want the car back on the road so that we can get back to our journeys again. What we want is the difference that the mechanic makes. And we're the same as solution-focused practitioners. There are some people who want what we do, and when we can find them, happy days, that's brilliant. But there's loads and loads of people who want the difference that we make. And just putting it out there, we actually have a professional advantage about this, because we are all about helping our clients realize noticeable differences that they desire, aren't we? We're all about asking people what they want and asking people what difference that will make for them and what they will notice when they get it and so on. We actually have all the skills to turn this into the way that we help more people and give more referrals to each other or find more referrals for ourselves. So it's just a thought, just putting it out there. But if we start thinking about the difference that we've made for people, now, it may be that you cannot actually know the difference that you've made. Maybe it's not professionally appropriate for you to contact people and find out. What you can do so is you can make a pretty good guess, a pretty good educated guess. But it's like, yeah, this is how I help people. And like Nikki as a mediator there, you can say you help people with confidence that you have helped people, because I'm sure you've helped lots and lots of people with exactly the thing I described. Maybe not in every case has it worked out brilliantly, but in most cases you will have made a difference, and that's what we're offering. And when somebody comes to you having been told about the difference that you made, you're not promising to do something, you're not promising to achieve something. You're just saying, well, I helped somebody like you. I'm really happy to see if I can help you, this new person, as well. Let's start the conversation and let's see. Does that make sense? Yeah, all with me so far? Okay, so there's just a few things, just a couple of things just to wrap this up, because I'd like to turn this as well into... Sorry, Hector, I've just lost my mouse here. There we go. I'll just pop you back on mute there if I can. Okay, so now how do we turn this into useful conversations? There is a bit of a problem with this whole networking thing, because this is the question that most people ask. And I'm sure it's been asked an awful lot in today's session. So how do we honestly answer this question respectfully? When somebody's asked us, what do we do? We're all very polite, aren't we? We'll all actually say, well, I am a solution-focused therapist, or a mediator, or a coach, or I'm a doctor of medicine. Instead, what we can do is to start turning our story into really, really short, almost sound bites, by turning it into this format. Instead of saying what you do or what you are, instead, tell a little story. I help, like, with. So in the Luke Skywalker case, for example, well, I help people destroy evil Death Stars. Oh, do we know anybody else who wants a Death Star destroying? If so, introduce them to Luke. He might be able to help you. We had a cracking one earlier on. Gunnar, it's great to see you here. I know it's after midnight with you. You must be coming up to 1 in the morning now. We were talking earlier on, and Gunnar's told me she's written a couple of books, and she does speeches, and she does workshops, and she works with lots of big organizations. And I said, well, tell me about a client. What difference did you make for them? She said, well, when they came in, they were really despondent. And by the end, they were full of joy and full of hope. And I said, good, that's fantastic. Would it be fair to say that you bring hope to the despondent? And she was like, oh yeah, I never thought of it like that. Who do we know out there who's despondent that Gunnar could bring hope to? Yeah, Ella, you creatively help people solve their problems and their challenges and overcome their challenges in the wonderful workshop that you run, that I know you've run already twice today on this SF24 call. Who do we know who has some challenges they'd like to overcome? pass them to Ella. She can help them in their workshop. How Ella does the workshop, Ella can explain after they've been introduced. So if we can think of this format, then this helps us to start a useful conversation, because if somebody's engaged, if somebody's interested to find out how Ella can help you tackle your challenges, or how Gunal can bring hope to your despondent colleagues, they're going to say, oh, that's interesting. How do you do that? And if you're telling somebody else's story, they'll say, oh, that's interesting. How do they do that? And I can very honestly say, well, I've experienced Ella's workshop. It's absolutely fantastic, but I've honestly no idea how she does it. Why don't I introduce you and she can tell you herself? And this is how we make an introduction at the start of the conversation. And then Ella gets to tell her story, or Gunal or Nikki or everybody here, you get to tell your story, your way of how you helped somebody. It's all about engagement, remember? If you're invited to tell how you did something, the other person is engaged. And if you're not invited, don't worry about it. Don't talk about it, crack on. Don't try and persuade somebody that they need solution-focused practice, because they're just not going to. You're going to end up in an argument. But well, I've already got one, or that sounds like what I already do, etc., etc., etc. We've all had those conversations. Don't worry about it. Unless you place it in the context of how you've helped somebody, people aren't thinking about the somebody else or themselves. They're just trying to, well, that sounds a bit, not sure. And they'll start pushing back, and you'll be ending up in a persuasive conversation. So remember, people don't want what you do. They want the difference that you make. And one last thing, I will never be credible at describing what you do. Think of the years and years and years of experience, qualifications that you have all got in your practice. But I can be incredible at telling your stories. Okay, so this is the format I recommend you use, whether it's networking, whether it's just meeting somebody for a coffee, somebody that you don't know. Please do use this, and let me know how you get on, because by all means, please do connect with me. Connect with me through my website or LinkedIn. And I've managed to get, if anybody would like it, I've got a couple of resources for you. So my first book, which I know Ella, thank you. I think Ella, you are my #1 fan. Ella carries this in a briefcase and tells everybody about it. If you'd like an audiobook version of this, please email me or connect with me, and I will happily send you a code for you to get an audiobook version of this absolutely free of charge as a little gift for coming on this workshop. And another resource for you, all the storytelling stuff. This is a book by a friend of mine, a guy called Paul Furlong, Rule the World. He has a podcast by the same name, and I highly recommend this book. It's a huge, huge resource about the power of stories and how to craft an excellent story. And that's everything for me. Thank you very much for coming to this workshop, and it's wonderful to have been here. Thank you, Beverly, for including me in the program. And I'm probably going to head off to bed now, and I'll see you guys in whatever time zone. I'll see you in about 8 hours.
Oh, thank you.
Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great.
Thank you, Andrew. Good night.
Thanks, Linda. Good night.
Maybe see you tomorrow at something else.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you, Alienka. Thank you, Lee. And thank you,
Thanks,
Hector.
Andrew.
Oh, my pleasure.
I had just one question.
Please,
Sorry.
By the way, Louise, please do.
I didn't quite understand these 3 questions in terms of how you ask. So telling the story, I understand. And what difference did this make for that person afterwards? I get. But would you like an introduction to someone? Is that you asking, do you know someone that maybe needs to be introduced to someone who does that work?
This is, yeah. So if I'm asking you, so Louis, let's do this together. Just tell me a story of how you helped somebody recently.
Yeah. Like actually tell the story?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just the story I told earlier was around helping someone out in supervision that was really struggling with boundaries and workplace stress and lack of resources, and just how she's moved through the first few sessions. She would feel better after the session, but she'd come back the next session feeling the same way. But the last 2 sessions, she's been able to incorporate some of what we've talked around enforcing boundaries and creating boundaries for herself and standing up for herself and advocating for herself. And that's something that she always helps other people with, but wasn't able to do for herself. And so just how she's literally looks like a new person. She's just shed off everything.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you've just described to me the difference that you made for her. You've helped her look and feel like a new person. And has that made any other difference for her? Has that given her more confidence to move on in her career or do something else?
Yep, definitely. She's looking at registration now, which she wasn't before, and just feeling more confident to stand her ground.
Wonderful. So the reason that last question is in there is because would you like to help more people move on to their career and progress to registration?
Okay. Yeah.
So if you would, and then if I know people, I'm guessing, is this, do you work in medical practice?
No, social work.
Social work. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I knew more young social workers who were maybe struggling, lack of confidence and so on, and you were happy to help them, I would pass them your way and say, hey, you need to talk to Louie. She's helped somebody just like you. And you know what? They're like a new person and they are, heading for registration. Wow, I need to talk to Louie. And when they say, well, how did she do that? I honestly haven't a clue. She's just a genius. Let me just introduce you. And then I can ring you up and say, Louie, a friend of mine needs your help. Is that okay? But I put that question in at the end as a sense check, because sometimes people tell me a story and they say, actually, no, I don't want any more people like that. Thank you very much. So, oh, okay, then. Well, I'll know not to go and find them for you.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes total sense. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the clarification.
It's a real pleasure, Louie. And please do connect up and let's keep in touch.
Will do. Have a good day. Have a good sleep.
Thank you. Yes. See you in a few hours.
Bye.
Bye-bye.